Fort Resolute drifted above the frozen moon like a blade suspended in darkness, its armored hull glowing faintly against the endless field of stars. Inside the orbital academy, exhaustion hung heavier than gravity. Cadets stumbled from the zero-gravity combat chamber with bruised limbs, shaking muscles, and sweat freezing against synthetic uniforms before the corridor heaters could catch it. Human cadet Elias Ward walked near the back of the formation, silent despite the ache burning through his shoulders. The mess hall doors slid open with mechanical precision. Steam rolled from serving counters where nutrient trays were already waiting. Alien cadets moved eagerly into line, scales flashing beneath bright lights, claws tapping metal floors, voices buzzing with smug relief after 12 brutal hours of drills. Elias noticed the pause before the service drones reached the humans. One by one, the machines skipped them. No trays appeared. Luis Ortega frowned first. What? Do we suddenly stop existing? Several alien cadets snorted with laughter. Across the hall, Commander Threx stood on the observation platform overlooking the chamber. The towering officer folded his gray arms behind his back while silence spread through the room. Human cadets, Threx announced, your rations have been suspended for the remainder of the training cycle. Maruchan stared upward in disbelief. Suspended for what reason? To evaluate dependency responses, Threx replied calmly. Advanced species evolved beyond constant nutritional reliance long ago. Humanity claims adaptability. This experiment will determine whether those claims possess merit. The room erupted with whispers. Some cadets exchanged amused bets immediately. Others simply watched the humans with clinical curiosity, as if waiting to observe laboratory animals collapse. Luis stepped forward angrily. You can't run combat drills and starve people at the same time. Observe your tone, Threx warned. You are soldiers, not infants demanding comfort. Elias rested a hand on Luis's shoulder before the argument worsened. Hunger already gnawed at his stomach, sharp and familiar, but panic wasted energy. He had learned that lesson years earlier on the dust colonies of Vega Frontier, where winter storms buried supply routes for weeks and families survived only because neighbors shared heat, tools, and scraps. He guided the others toward an empty table while alien cadets devoured steaming meals nearby. The smell alone felt cruel. Nia Brooks sat heavily across from him. How long do you think they'll keep this going? Long enough to expect us to fail, Elias answered. Mara leaned closer, and then Elias studied the crowded hall carefully. Above them, ventilation shafts rattled softly through the ceiling. Maintenance workers constantly moved supplies beneath the station. Old stations always had forgotten places. Then we adapt before they think adaptation is possible, he said quietly. Hours later, the barracks lights dimmed into artificial night. Human cadets lay awake listening to stomachs growl through the silence. Luis cursed beneath his blanket while Nia tried distracting herself by organizing medical kits nobody needed yet. Elias sat near the narrow window overlooking the frozen moon below. Thin clouds twisted across the white surface like smoke over ashes. He remembered nights beside real fires on Vega Frontier, where entire settlements gathered around rusted burn barrels because cold made strangers cooperate quickly. A faint organic scent drifted through the air recyclers. Not station disinfectant. Something earthy. Elias stood slowly. Near the rear wall, a maintenance hatch sat half-concealed behind storage crates. Warm air leaked from its edges. Without waking the others, he grabbed a flashlight, an empty toolkit, and slipped into the darkness below the station, carrying a thought stronger than hunger. If Fort Resolute would not feed humans, humans would feed themselves. Elias descended through the maintenance shaft until the polished corridors of Fort Resolute disappeared behind layers of rusted metal and darkness. The air grew warmer with every ladder rung. Pipes trembled inside the walls, carrying heat from the station's aging reactors, and somewhere below, water dripped steadily into unseen chambers. His flashlight swept across faded warning symbols written in languages no longer used by the Academy. The station had buried its oldest sections beneath newer construction, But forgotten places never truly died. He reached the bottom level shortly before dawn cycle. Massive generator columns towered through the gloom like ancient monuments, their surfaces vibrating softly with power. Between the reactors stretched abandoned storage bays filled with cracked containers and broken machinery. Elias knelt beside a vent where warm moisture collected along the steel floor. Green fungal strands clung to the edges. Real growth. A grin touched his face for the first time in days. By morning cycle, Mara, Luis, and Nia followed him back through the shafts carrying empty packs and scavenged tools. Luis stopped dead when he saw the underground chambers. "You found an entire world under the station," he whispered. "Not a world," Elias replied. "A chance." Mara immediately inspected the surrounding systems. While the others searched crates, she pried open rusted wall panels and traced old wiring with focused intensity. "These lower decks used to support hydroponics before the Academy expanded upward," she explained. "Most systems are dead, but not all of them." Nia crouched beside the fungi near the vent. "Are these safe to eat?" "Safer than starvation," Luis muttered. Over the next several hours, the hidden level transformed from a ruin into a refuge. Elias organized scavenging routes through storage corridors while Mara restored weak electrical flow to damaged grow lamps. Nia cataloged edible growths and rationed purified condensation water collected from cooling pipes. Luis dragged broken metal containers together and built crude cooking pits near the thermal vents. The work exhausted them, yet something stronger than hunger kept them moving. Purpose spread through the human cadets with contagious energy. By the third day, without official rations, the Academy expected deterioration. Instead, humans continued reporting for drills with stubborn determination. Their movements slowed slightly, but their focus sharpened under pressure. Alien cadets noticed the change with growing confusion. Commander Threx noticed most of all. During combat exercises, he observed Elias completing endurance trials despite visible weight loss. Mara repaired damaged equipment faster than rested engineering cadets. Luis still cracked jokes during formation lines, irritating everyone around him. The humans should have been desperate. Instead, they looked disciplined. Late that cycle, Threx reviewed station maintenance reports inside the command center. One detail caught his attention immediately. Unexplained smoke traces within lower ventilation channels. "Smoke?" he repeated sharply. An operations technician adjusted the display. "Minimal levels, Commander. Likely mechanical residue from old generator sectors." Threx narrowed his eyes. Fort Resolute had no open flame systems anywhere within Academy regulations. Below the station, flames flickered beneath a circle of scavenged metal plates while steam rose from a battered cooking container. The smell alone nearly drove the exhausted cadets mad. Thick fungal stew simmered beside roasted protein roots harvested from abandoned hydroponic trays. For the first time in days, warmth replaced the hollow ache in their stomachs. Luis inhaled dramatically. "I'm officially declaring Elias the greatest explorer in human history." "Eat before you start worshipping him," Mara replied. The cadets gathered around the fire pit with quiet relief spreading across tired faces. Shadows danced against the walls while heat rolled through the chamber in steady waves. Nia watched everyone carefully, smiling for the first time since the ration suspension began. Elias sat near the flames, studying the smoke twisting upward into ancient vents overhead. Fire changed people. It always had. Around fire, strangers became communities. Somewhere beyond the chamber, metal scraped softly against stone. An alien cadet stood hidden in the darkness, staring wide-eyed at dozens of humans laughing around forbidden feast fires. The alien cadet who discovered the hidden chamber reported everything before the next station cycle ended. Rumors spread across Fort Resolute faster than official orders ever could. By morning, whispers filled training halls and barracks corridors. Humans were not starving in silence beneath the Academy. They were thriving. Commander Threx listened to the report without expression, though irritation tightened the ridges along his jaw. The young cadet described glowing fires, organized shelters, and the smell of cooked food drifting through abandoned sectors. Every detail sounded impossible. Open flames violated Academy code. Unauthorized occupation of maintenance decks violated at least 12 more. Yet smoke continued appearing in ventilation scans. Threx descended personally into the lower levels accompanied by 2 security officers. The deeper he traveled, the warmer the station became. Industrial darkness slowly gave way to flickering orange light reflected across steel walls. Strange aromas drifted through the corridors, rich with spices and roasted nutrients unlike sterile Academy rations. Then he heard laughter. Humans moved confidently through the underground chambers carrying tools, water containers, and baskets filled with harvested fungi. Damaged generators now hummed with restored power. Repaired hydroponic lamps cast pale green light over fresh growth trays. The neglected sector resembled a functioning settlement more than a hidden refuge. At the center of the chamber, flames crackled beneath iron cooking plates while cadets gathered shoulder to shoulder around long makeshift tables. Smoke spiraled upward through ceiling vents in thin silver streams. Warm light softened exhausted faces that should have shown desperation days ago. Elias Ward stood beside the fire, stirring a steaming pot when Threx approached. The chamber fell silent immediately. "You occupied restricted sectors without authorization," Threx said coldly. Elias met his gaze steadily. "We occupied and used space to survive. You violated Academy regulations. You denied us food." The surrounding cadets watched carefully while tension tightened through the chamber. Threx expected hostility or fear from the humans. Instead, he found discipline. Their equipment remained organized. Medical supplies sat neatly arranged beside sleeping areas. Rotating duty schedules glowed across scavenged data screens. This was not rebellion. It was adaptation. Luis leaned casually against a support beam nearby. "You'd be amazed what humans can accomplish when properly motivated." Mara shot him a warning look, but the comment earned quiet grins from several cadets. Threx studied the open flames carefully. "Primitive behavior," he muttered. "Reliance on combustion and communal rituals." Elias glanced toward the fire. "Fire kept humanity alive long before we reached the stars. Civilized species evolved beyond such dependency." "No," Elias replied calmly. "Most species just forgot hardship." The words lingered heavily in the chamber. Elias stepped closer to the flames, his voice quieter now. "Humans survived ice ages, famines, wars, and planetary collapse because we learned one lesson early. Nobody survives alone for long. Hunger forces people together. Fire gives them a reason to stay together." Several alien cadets, standing near the entrance, exchanged uncertain looks. They had trained beside humans for months, yet none had seen them like this before. Around the flames, the exhausted cadets appeared stronger instead of weaker. One security officer leaned toward Threx carefully. "Commander, station morale reports show increasing curiosity among non-human cadets." Threx's expression darkened. Curiosity threatened hierarchy. He turned back toward Elias. "This operation ends immediately. All unauthorized activity will cease." Elias folded his arms. "Then restore our rations." For several seconds, neither man moved. Finally, Threx spoke through clenched teeth. "You have until next cycle to dismantle this sector." He turned sharply and marched toward the corridor. Behind him, the fire continued crackling steadily, untouched by his authority. Hours later, the scent of cooked food drifted upward through the Academy vents again. Alien cadets paused during drills, distracted by unfamiliar hunger awakened through smell alone. Conversation spread across every level of Fort Resolute. Then emergency sirens shattered the station. Red warning lights flooded the corridors while automated announcements echoed overhead. Critical supply failure detected. Primary ration reserves compromised. All cadets prepare for emergency lockdown procedures immediately. Emergency sirens echoed across Fort Resolute, while sealed blast doors slammed shut throughout the academy. Red warning lights washed over the corridors in harsh pulses, replacing the cold white glow cadets knew so well. Inside the command center, officers rushed between consoles as system failures multiplied by the minute. Commander Threx stared at the central display in disbelief. A supply transport carrying fresh ration reserves had suffered reactor damage during docking maneuvers. Contamination warnings spread through every storage sector connected to the station's food distribution network. "How long until reserves stabilize?" he demanded. A technician lowered his gaze uneasily. "At current consumption rates, remaining uncontaminated supplies will last less than 40 hours. Silence settled heavily across the room. For the first time since the lockdown began, fear spread openly among the academy staff. Cadets, already exhausted from training, now faced real starvation. Species accustomed to carefully regulated nutrition cycles began weakening almost immediately. Tempers rose in crowded barracks. Fights broke out near emergency dispensers. Even disciplined officers struggled to hide growing anxiety. Below the station, the hidden human settlement remained calm. Elias listened to the emergency broadcast beside the fire while Mara adjusted water purifiers near the hydroponic trays. Luis stirred steaming stew inside a reinforced thermal pot, while Nia organized medical supplies for exhausted cadets arriving from upper levels. "They'll come down here soon," Mara said quietly. Luis glanced toward Elias. "Question is whether we help after everything they pulled." Elias watched smoke drift upward through the vents overhead. "Hunger makes people desperate," he replied. "That includes them." Hours later, the first alien cadets appeared at the chamber entrance. Pride vanished quickly beside starvation. Their uniforms remained sharp, but hollow eyes betrayed exhaustion and uncertainty. None spoke at first. They simply stared at the warmth surrounding the fire pits, and the organized food stations spread through the underground sector. Nia approached them calmly with bowls of hot broth. One cadet hesitated before accepting it. "Why would you share this?" "Because you're hungry," Nia answered simply. Word spread rapidly after that. By the next cycle, humans guided dozens of cadets through survival tasks beneath the station. Mara taught engineering teams how to restore abandoned hydroponic systems using scavenge power cells. Luis supervised cooking fires while loudly insulting anyone incapable of cutting vegetables correctly. Despite the jokes, his constant humor eased tensions that might have exploded days earlier. The underground chambers transformed into the busiest sector on Fort Resolute. Alien cadets who once mocked humanity now sat shoulder to shoulder beside open flames, sharing meals prepared from restored crops and cultivated fungi. Stories replaced suspicion around the fires. Different species exchanged survival traditions passed down across distant worlds. Commander Threx arrived alone during the third night of lockdown. He stopped near the largest fire pit where cadets from multiple species gathered together beneath drifting smoke. Nobody saluted his arrival immediately. They were too busy eating, talking, and laughing together. For once, hierarchy mattered less than survival. Elias stepped beside him quietly. "Your officers received their portions already." Threx studied the chamber carefully. "You rebuilt this sector in less than a week." "We rebuilt ourselves first," Elias replied. The commander remained silent for several moments. Firelight reflected across his hardened features while cadets nearby shared fresh bread pulled from improvised heating trays. "I misjudged humanity," Threx admitted finally. "I believed hunger created weakness." Elias looked around the crowded chamber. Hunger teaches people what matters. Above them, smoke continued rising through the academy vents, no longer hidden or forbidden. Every cadet on Fort Resolute could see it now. The fires once treated as symbols of disobedience had become beacons guiding the station through crisis. Weeks later, supply ships finally restored normal operations, yet the feast fires remained burning beneath the academy. Cadets gathered around them, every cycle regardless of species or rank. From orbit, Faint trails of smoke curled upward from Fort Resolute into the endless dark, carrying proof that humanity's greatest strength had never been power alone. It was the ability to create warmth where none existed before.